Brettspieler sind der Hammer. Welcome to the Tabletop Shop.
It's a dark, cold night. Steam or fog, you can't tell which, lightly billows up around you from unseen crevices. In the distance, you hear a scream followed by an angry shout in a tongue unknown to you. Unsure of what to do, you turn to run in the opposite direction. The icy wind on your face makes you long for home, but you don't know where home is. You don't know where you are. As you round a bend, you are assaulted by a myriad of signs, some flashing, some dingy and drab, all bearing letters and symbols that you cannot possibly understand. The signs distract you from your path, and you trip over an object and fall to the ground, your face hitting the cold stone. The world is so unforgiving. You turn to look at what caused your perilous fall. Staring back up at you is the face of a man. He squints as he inspects the jewel trapped between his fingers. Despite yourself, you marvel at the convenience of finding a game in a foreign country that you can play with no issue. Hello and welcome back to the Tabletop Shop podcast. This week on the pod, we're digging up a classic castle-building game and then discussing some of our best language-independent games. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nate Clark, and as always, seated halfway across the country from me is your other co-host, Mr. Cody Pennington.
Who is mildly confused but also impressed by that intro.
I was just a random thing that I was like, I feel like every single episode we've done has started the exact same way, and I figured I'd just spice it up a little bit. It's still an intro. Yeah,
I like it, man. There was some good writing right there.
I'm not going to be doing this every time. I wrote that while I was on the toilet, just so you know.
That's something I didn't need to know, but thanks for sharing with the class.
The game is Splendor, by the way. I didn't actually explicitly say that, but
Okay. With the jewels, yeah, that makes sense. Now, here's the thing. You know how we've been having trouble with our banters, as particularly I am slow to learn new games lately. So, like, we just keep, like, our top 5 or top 3 are always kind of like the same games that are, like, in our top 10, you know? Yeah, like, that's a problem.
Okay.
So I've actually got an idea here for you that I think should fix that if we want to use this for our next board banter. Just stay with me here. Top 5 games that aren't in our top 10.
So our 11 through 15.
Yeah.
No, actually,
And
I
then
had
the
an
week
idea.
after that, we just go top 10 games, or top 5 games that aren't in our top 15.
That's pretty funny, actually. But I had a good idea.
Yeah.
Which was we could do, it's actually a very similar idea. I was thinking we could do top 5 games that aren't in our top 100. So we'd literally be talking about our 101 to 105.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. We'll workshop it.
Yeah, let's do it. There's always time.
Intro question for you.
Yeah.
What are some of the best board game snacks, Keone?
Some of the best board game snacks.
Board game snacks.
Definitely not chips or anything that will dustify your fingers.
Yeah, there's certain things you got to rule out for sure.
Yeah. I'm looking at you, Anna.
Wait, why?
It was like it was last time we had you guys over, I think. We like provided chips, and then she was like dipping in like to the bottom, like with all the crumbs, and the chip bag was like almost gone or something. And I was kind of like sitting there like just thinking like, please wash your hands or something before touching the cards.
Right. That's funny. I have no memory of that. Definitely we don't eat chips while we play games.
Okay. So it was our fault for providing such delicious
it sounds
chips.
like it. Yeah, actually, it sounds like it was your fault.
Well, so no chips, definitely no Cheetos, no Fritos, none of that stuff. Crackers could be appropriate depending on how crummy they are. But I'm going to throw at you dried fruit can be good as long as it's not mega sticky. One staple here in the Pennington household is dried mango. Mm-hmm. It can be hard to find like the good organic non-sugarified stuff that actually still has a good consistency, but that's definitely one of the most common things.
The first things that came to mind are kind of boring, but like grapes or pretzels or something like that. Actually,
grapes, that's a good one.
We had Cheez-Its the other day when we were playing a game, and actually Cheez-Its don't leave that much stuff on your fingers. So kind of a half recommend there. Also, like anything like chocolate covered, like espresso beans or nuts or berries or whatever.
The other day, man, I was kind of tired. It was in the evening. I wanted a little pick me up, and I thought we still had some espresso beans in the house. And I looked, and we didn't, and I was sad.
That sounds like a terrible story.
Well, no, the story I just told is great. The circumstances were terrible.
Actually, okay, I take it back. The story wasn't that great either.
Okay,
kind of a lame story, actually.
Thanks, man.
Cody, you want to go first on something you may or may not have played this week?
You know how it is for me. Tough playing board games these days, especially new games. I mean, we played Underwater Cities recently, but come on, that's not a new game.
I feel like it's been
playing
so
a lot
long.
of Fallout. How's that?
It's been so long that it qualifies. But Fallout, okay, Fallout 4.
Yeah. Yep.
Put a lot of hours into that game.
Well, here's the thing. Skyrim, if I play Skyrim, and it's been a really long time, I'm usually like, you know what? I'll start a new character. I'll try a different class, and then I'll eventually just default back to Stealth Archer, because that's, you just can't beat it. But with Fallout, I tried doing that after not playing it for like half a year to a year, and I started a little bit of a new account, or save, whatever you call it, profile, I don't know, character. And then I just went back to my old account, and I've been playing that. And I'm getting the level super high. It's something I don't normally do. It feels sort of weird, but it's fun to just try to 100% the game, you know?
It's funny that you say, like, slipping back into, like, Stealth Archer or whatever. But for me, it's like, I'll start a new Skyrim character and then get bored and then load up my veteran character that is a Stealth Archer. Just like,
there you go.
Because you feel so underpowered when you, like,
Yeah.
have, like, a, whatever, a spell sword or something, and you're just like, why am I doing this? It's
Doing
too
like,
hard.
flames. You're sitting there like barbecuing a
Skeever.
mud crab or something for like 10 hours.
Yeah. Do you care about achievements in games at all? Because you talked about like 100%ing Fallout, which I doubt you're going to do. That sounds very difficult. But do you care about achievements at all, or 100%ing games, or
like the
whatever?
actual like Xbox achievements?
Yeah.
That, like pop up? Nah. It's fun when I complete it, especially when it's like one of those diamond achievements. You're like, I'm an incredible gamer that have done this one specific task.
Yeah, you've done one like thing repetitively for a very long time, or you did something else crazy on accident.
Yeah, exactly. But beyond that, I don't pay any attention to it.
Yeah, same. It doesn't really matter to me. And I'm not planning on ever 100%ing a game, because I feel like in general people don't care that much anymore. I feel like people used to care a lot back in Xbox's heyday more so, but now I feel like people kind of don't care so much.
Yeah, just move on to the next thing.
And the next thing being my plays, I guess. I played a little trick-taking game called, speaking of German, called Schadenfreude. This is an interesting little game. The trick-taking part is pretty straightforward, except the second highest number of the trick will win, not the highest number.
Oh.
And the game ends once somebody gets to like 60 points or 40 points or something. That person does not win. Whoever's next closest wins when somebody hits 40 points. So whenever you, like, for taking tricks, you want to be second. And for actually at the end of the game, you want to be second also. And as far as points go too. So it sounds like a gimmicky kind of thing, and I really thought it was going to be, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. We played it a couple of times, and I was very satisfied with it. Yeah, pretty fun.
That actually sounds pretty fun. I want to try that.
I don't know if it's available in the US right now. The guy who had it, somebody brought it back from, it's actually a Japanese game. Somebody brought it back from Japan and gave him a copy. And so I don't know if it's widely available in the US right now or not.
What's it called again?
It's called Schadenfreude.
It sounds German.
Yeah, it is German, right. Schaden, and then it'll probably show up after that.
Not to be confused with Schottentotten.
Not to be, no, that is widely available in the US, and it's actually a German game. Yeah, Schadenfreude means getting joy out of somebody else's pain too, because there's a lot of like, there's a lot of things you can do to kind of ruin people in the game to take away points from people. So
okay,
yeah, that's fun. All right, moving on. I played Newsfjord. This is another Uwe. One of the people in our group is an Uwe diehard, and so I feel like every time we hang out, he's got another Uwe game to play.
Nice.
So yeah, this one was all right. I want to play it again. It was a much shorter Uwe experience. Felt like, again, like a lot of his games, it felt like a combination of a couple of things, kind of like Or et Labora and maybe Feast for Odin. I don't know, but it's definitely a smaller thing. where you're placing workers out. The worker placement thing is pretty basic, and then you can acquire some cards, some buildings that go on your mat. You can harvest trees on your mat. It's just resources and cards and special abilities and buildings and all that goodness that he throws in all of his games.
Nice.
So it's decent. But it's kind of like if you want an Uwe experience, but you want it a little bit shorter, it's probably like 20 minutes per player if everybody knows how to play. So it's not too bad.
Okay, it's not bad.
And then played Small World, actually. This is one that I've never really been interested in. It's something that would show up all the time on Dice Tower lists ages ago because this game is kind of, no one talks about it anymore. It's kind of past its prime. But this is one that they would come up a lot, and I'd always look at it, and I didn't like the art, and the game itself kind of seemed kind of boring and just kind of meh. But we played it, and I was surprised at how much I liked it. It's got this cool system. It's kind of Risk-esque, where you're all on a map and you're trying to take territories, and it's very definitive. It's not even combat. It's just like area control, kind of, or area majority. But it has this cool mechanism where you get a special character that has a random special ability attached to it. It's interesting, because your character will become less powerful. It'll have less troops over the course of the game because some of them will die or whatever, and so you want to start a new faction basically, but your old faction stays on the board and still generates points for you while your new faction can go back out and do stuff again, and it has a new special power. And so it's cool. It's a cool little cycle, a cool little system. There's a lot of timing elements too, like when somebody goes into decline is what it's called, when you're shifting to a new race. And yeah, so pretty interesting. I liked it quite a bit. Definitely would like to play it again. Was impressed by it. And then last but not least, Great Western Trail Argentina. This is one of the new versions of Great Western Trail. I'm not going to explain it all because I've already explained Great Western Trail before. Great Western Trail, fantastic game. I love it. Big rondel system and some deck building going as well. Great Western Trail Argentina, a little more complicated, but actually a little less punishing at the same time too. It gives a little more flexibility, but also a little bit more stuff that you could potentially overthink. So
that's a pretty dope list. That's all I got.
That's all you got. All right.
That's all we got.
Game of the week. I have actually played this rather recently, so I believe it is incumbent upon me to explain.
Especially since in preparation for this podcast, I had to literally watch a How It Played video from Rodney Smith to remember how Carcassonne even works.
Serious, man?
It's been a long time since I played it, bro.
You still own it, or did you sell it?
I sold it a while ago.
Okay. Do you think you'll ever play it again?
I'm sure at some point in my life I'll play it. But
there will be a situation where it's just what happens, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those.
Actually, when I was watching it, I kind of missed it a little bit. Like, you know what?
Yeah.
That was a decent little game.
It plays stuff. Okay, I'm already trying to. No, I'm not trying to do that. All right, let me explain
All right.
it.
Okay, do
I'm
it.
going to start talking about it. Yeah, Carcassonne is the classic tile laying game, I guess you could say, whereby in a circular or turn order, whatever you want to say, you draw a tile out of a bag or out of a stack, and you add it to the board. So the board is this ever increasing mass of tiles. And these tiles have either roads, cities, or fields, or a combination of them, or what are they called? Sanctuaries? Monasteries. And you add it to the board, and you can add a little meeple to your piece, and there's a lot of building cities to try and score points, or building roads to try and score points, or putting farmers in fields, and you can try and steal other people's cities, try and invade other people's cities with your workers and your pieces, essentially. And it's a very fast game that you just go around and you just keep drawing pieces till all the pieces are gone, and you're scoring things as things are completed throughout the game, and then that's it. That's literally
That's it.
I can't believe you had to look up a video to remember how to play this, man.
Well, it's like I couldn't remember how the scoring worked exactly, or what the like order of operations is on the things, which was actually kind of important because there were a couple things that I didn't even remember. So you knew how it is.
All right, well, let's get into it. Something I do like quite a bit. This is a pretty obvious one, I feel like. And personally, I would say the game has a very good replayability because it is literally has to be different every single time. I mean, the amount of possible different maps that you could build with the pieces is pretty much innumerable. The real interesting part, though, is how you interact with the other people. because you generally don't just do your own thing the whole time. You kind of can try to sequester yourself off and not mess with other people, but a lot of times there's this element of trying to take over somebody else's city that they've been building, or try to take over somebody else's road, or whatever it is. So just the interactions between people and how you strategically place your pieces and how the board builds itself every game just makes every game a different puzzle, basically, a different problem. So
I'll hop on that a little bit. I called this you're manipulating neutral actions. I guess it's not exactly what you're talking about for like messing with other people, but well, no, it is the same thing. So when you're putting down a tile, you're contributing it for everyone to be able to use in some way, or it potentially can affect everyone. So it's sort of a neutral thing, but it's your strategy, your purpose in trying to make that tile be good for you. That is, it's the puzzle, it's the challenge, it's the technique.
I have a question. Would you call this element luck? Like from my perspective, when somebody else adds a piece to the board, is that a luck element of the game? Because I don't know what you have and I cannot possibly predict where you would place your piece. Is it luck or is it just an unknown factor? But then what's really the difference?
In the sense that it's a random aspect in as far as you won't be able to predict it, maybe. But I mean, in any board game where you don't know what someone else is going to do, like in a worker placement game, like, I guess, do you call it luck if someone goes on a spot that you were trying to go?
I think in a way it kind of is. You're like, oh man, because you could feasibly say, oh, I was unlucky that this person went here and did this, right? Mm-hmm. I had this experience in Dune Imperium recently where somebody took a card out of the Imperium row just because they had the influence to spend and it was the end of the game, it was their last turn. They're like, whatever, I have influence to spend, I'll just take this card. Sure, and it was a card I needed to actually, it would have gotten me another point, and just because of the situation of the game. That's unlucky. That's unpredictable, right? The person didn't even do it for a strategic reason. They just did it because they could, you know? So that's a random chance kind of a thing, even though technically it's not because somebody had agency and did it. There's no way to possibly predict it. So that's, from my perspective as the player, I think that qualifies as luck, right?
I feel like as far as the player is concerned, that's sort of how it functions. But as a game mechanic, I wouldn't call it like a luck mechanic. Yeah, I feel like that's just kind of built into...
It's not luck in the sense that like drawing something out of a bag is luck, like quacks or something, right? Like that's completely out of everybody's control. So it is a little bit different, yeah.
It's not a globally randomized event because someone else has agency. What's uncertain is what they're going to do with it.
Okay, yeah. Glad we settled.
So anyway, what else do you like about the game?
It plays fast, man. It's a really fast game, especially if you don't have any expansions involved. I mean, this is a really, really quick game, and honestly, plays really well at all player counts and doesn't really get longer at other player counts either because there's the same amount of tiles and all those tiles are going to come out. That's the game timer. So it plays pretty much the same length at all player counts and it's really fast. Like Anna and I could probably sit down and play this in 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
My variation of that is that this is a game with simple operation for a decent amount of depth that comes out of it. So yeah, it's like easy to set up, easy to put away, quick to play. But even what you're doing is literally just you pick up a tile, you put it down, and then you decide if you want to put a meeple down at the same time. Just two simple decisions every time. Not easy decisions, but simple decisions, and I like that.
I think that's part of what's made Carcassonne start to become kind of a household staple almost, in the sense that like Monopoly kind of is. It's not quite to that level. Obviously, I mean, everyone in the U.S., I don't know, it's a world. Everybody in the U.S. would know what Monopoly is if you just mention it, and not everybody's going to know Carcassonne, obviously. But it's working its way towards that status, and I think that's part of the reason, is it's just so accessible. It doesn't require 10 minutes of setup and 25 minutes, 30 minutes of rules explanation, you know? It's just like, it's very straightforward, but yet it's so replayable and so strategic. So.
Yeah, it's a great gateway game.
However, the more you play it, my next point... The more you play it, eventually you're probably going to want to throw some expansions in, and this game has expansions aplenty. Doesn't mean they're all good. It does not mean they're all good. There are some meh expansions for this game. There are, however, some very fantastic expansions. The Inns and Cathedrals and the Traders and Builders are probably the two best ones that I've played with. And I've played with a lot. Those ones are both like almost necessary expansions for this, I would say.
Yeah, I have not played any of the expansions, which is sad because I know I'm missing out on quite a lot. But I will say, for my final like, that sort of jumping off what you were saying a little bit earlier, this is a classic. It's nostalgic. It's got a lot attached to it, that pairs with it. In my mind, this is kind of on par with Catan. Catan is probably more legendary, of course, than Carcassonne, and it's older. But I feel like Carcassonne is one of those other games you always hear listed as like one of the first games someone played, one of the just standard staples that will exist in a board game house unless you sold it like me. But yeah, there's not many games that sort of sit on that throne or that shelf, if you will.
I think Catan, Carcassonne, and Dominion are like, at least for me, they're these three kind of games that almost bridge the gap between common household board games and the strategy world. And I think Splendor could probably be lumped into that also. But for me, those are the three games that my dad bought when I was kind of like middle school aged, or even a bit younger. And so somehow those were on his radar. He's not a hobby board game person. Somehow they were on his radar and he ended up getting all those games, So they definitely are kind of became ubiquitous almost to a lot of people that wouldn't have normally found them.
When it's a board game you can also find in like Walmart, you know that it has crossed the barrier, the threshold into the modern world.
I don't know if that's true anymore. Because, like, I was just in Walmart the other day, and there was a My Little Everdell, which is like basically My Little Scythe, or what is it, My Little or Welcome to Everdell, I think is what it's called. Okay. It's basically like the My Little Scythe version of Everdell, and that's being sold in Walmart. And I don't see Everdell as a game that has crossed that barrier, and Everdell's not being sold
in a Walmart in West Virginia, nonetheless.
Right. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, like Wingspan is another one of those that has really crossed barriers. But then like Jaws of the Lion is in like Targets and Walmarts, and to me that doesn't that it doesn't bridge the gap. So I don't know. I think the hobby games are just starting to encroach more. I don't know. Maybe it is just that more people are like joining the hobby, so there's more demand. But I don't think that some of these games are ever making it to the ears or the attention of the average household, like Jaws of the Lion, for example.
So what about Lord of the Rings, the deck builder? Because you found that at a grocery outlet.
Dude, I found that at a discount grocery store, so I don't even know what to say about that, dude. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, legendary game.
Yeah, that's like finding a board game at like a Ross Dress for Less or something, or a Marshall's,
Yeah.
So,
well, I don't know. Even that, like Ross has this odd little spot in the back where you can.
I've never seen a board game.
It's not Roth's. It's Ross. But yeah, there's stuff.
Okay, let's move on to the cons.
Yeah, let's diss on this game. Yes, I will. And actually, one of my points is the complete opposite point of, I think, like the first thing you said. For me, the game lacks replayability, or the base game does. It's not to say that each game isn't a little bit different, because sure, the map's always going to be randomized, but it's the same way of saying like poker is different every game. Like, yes, the hands are always different. The cards are always randomized. Like no setup is going to be the same. But at least for Carcassonne, the experience is basically the same every time, at least for the base game. So again, I haven't played any of the expansions, and that's probably where the magic of the expansion lies. But this is why I ended up selling the game. As Kirsten and I played it a couple of times, but it just got kind of boring after a little bit. And it sat on the shelf. Did not get played.
I mean, I respect your opinion. I don't know if I understand your supporting points, because things like poker or I don't know, chess or something, like, yeah, they have the same. I guess chess doesn't have any variability, but take something like poker, because you mentioned it, is something that people play constantly, and they do World Series of and stuff like that, So I can understand that for you, Carcassonne isn't a game that falls into that category.
Yeah.
So, and it is simple.
Games like that continue to get played have a certain, I don't know, mystique or value or something to them. For me, Carcassonne just didn't quite have that, to where the experience was just kind of a repeat. And I guess maybe I just didn't like it enough necessarily to want to keep replaying it.
Yeah.
So that's me.
Well, I guess I can understand in a way, because actually my first point is that the current printing of Carcassonne, it does include the river, which is nice, which is kind of the starting mechanism. I like that a lot. The base game didn't come with that originally. That was a mini expansion. But it doesn't include a couple other things which I think are essential. Well, one specifically is the big man. So I don't know which expansion. One of the expansions includes a big guy, a big meeple, which is basically just a meeple with a value of 2. And it totally, I don't know if I'd say it totally revolutionizes the game, but it adds a very different element to Carcassonne where each person has one overpowered meeple that they can very easily use to take over somebody's city or take over somebody's road. Right? And I'm honestly pretty shocked that hasn't made it into, kind of like how the big man in viticulture made it into the essential edition as like standard, like this needs to be in the game.
Sure.
That's how I feel about the big man for Carcassonne. Like, this needs to be in the game, to the point that whenever Anna and I play, right now we just have the base game with no expansions. Whenever we play, we'll each grab a meeple of a different color and say, this is my big man. So like, I'll be playing as black, and then I have a one red meeple which counts as my big man, because it's just so, I feel like it's just so important to play with that. So I'm pretty disappointed that that has not become a standard thing in Carcassonne, because it's really missing it.
I think the same way that the river is included, you also get, it's like the abbot.
Yeah,
I
which is
believe in the base game.
not a good. We don't even play with that, actually. We use the abbot
Isn't
as
it
a
like
builder.
you can, as a builder?
We use the abbot as a builder, which is another piece from a different expansion that basically you put the builder, like if you're working on a city, you can add your builder to the city, and then every time that you add to the city, you get to draw another piece. Basically,
okay.
It's a little mechanism like that. It's really, really cool. A very interesting thing to involve. So we don't even play with the abbot stuff. We completely ignore that, and we use the abbot piece as a builder. So,
Well, what is isn't the function like he can only be played in a monastery or something?
it's like he is like he can go on monasteries, or there's these like little flower gardens that he's allowed to go on also, and he can only go.
Okay.
Only the abbot piece can be placed on the little flower gardens, which score the same way as monasteries. I don't understand the appeal at all to it. It doesn't really add anything to the game. So,
What, you don't like flowers, Nate?
I despise flowers. This is no.
Your poor wife.
All right, I think you're up.
All right. Oh yeah. I only have one other dislike. That was I had trouble coming up with a lot of points about this game. I'm not particularly passionate in either direction about Carcassonne, which is fine. But it has a space problem where the game expands, and depending on how you choose to expand it, you can run into a problem where now you physically can't build any farther because your piece is just going to fall off the table. And this thing is a beast to try to move. Like it's not
like almost undoable.
It's almost impossible. Like you'd have to take a picture probably and then try to move every single little tile that you
at that point, just take the game apart, take the game down, and like play another game. It'd take just as long.
Just give it up. So I feel like I remember you saying you have a house rule where you just can't build any farther than the table.
Yeah.
Which isn't really a house rule, it's just like a physics rule. But
taking a lot of credit there, Nate. I invented
thou
gravity.
shalt not suspend tiles in midair.
That's funny.
So anyway, that's a problem.
That's totally true. You don't run into this too much because the tiles are so small, but you know what game has that as an even bigger issue is Acrotiri. Because the Acrotiri tiles are like 4 times the size of Carcassonne tiles. And granted, you don't place as many of them as you do in Carcassonne. But that game I found, I've actually run into that issue more with Acrotiri than I have with...
no, never mind. I was going to say, but at least you start in the center of the board. I'm like, oh, well, Carcassonne does that too. So
Yeah, right.
never mind.
I mean, for us, it's always like, okay, we build the river out, and then once the river's built, then we'll like kind of adjust the river to be perfectly in the center of the table and then see what happens.
Okay.
So...
Yeah, the river just goes in a straight line and runs off the table. Oops.
Okay, that's a waterfall, Cody. The only other thing that I have to say is actually pretty similar to my previous point, which is just that the base experience is pretty simple compared to throwing a couple expansions in. There's one expansion that I think it's the Traders and Builders that adds in a bunch of city pieces, and a lot of these city pieces have little resource icons on them, and then there's this kind of side game going on if you're trying to collect different whoever has the most of each type of resource will get bonus points. But the cool thing about it is that like whoever caps a city will get all the resources in it, even if it's somebody else is going to get the points. So it's a different element of like, oh, do I want to cap this person's city because it's kind of small and there's a couple resources in it that I'll get, instead of them maybe capping their own city later and getting their points and the resources. This way they'll still get the points, but maybe I'll get the resources. It's a really cool element to that game. So it's hard to go back to base Carcassonne when you've played with stuff like that makes it so much better. So the base game is solid, but kind of a little too simple, I would say. And that kind of goes into your point of the replayability, where it's like, yeah, once you play it a few times, you really it feels like you need more. So.
Do you want to know what I just learned?
What'd you just learn?
Carcassonne apparently is a fortified city in French. In France. I was reading as it.
Also in French. It's a French word.
Yep. Well, doesn't it just mean castle? Am I making that up? No,
you might be making that up. I don't know.
If it's French, that's chateau. So anyway, apparently it's a city, and I didn't realize that. And I'm looking at pictures of the city, and it actually looks a lot like the little tiles you're putting down. So that's cool.
That checks out. Castles of Burgundy is the same. Burgundy is a province or an area of France, and so Castles of Burgundy is, I guess, based on that. If you could say it has a theme, which is kind of a stretch to say, but
I do know that if you're from Burgundy, you're a Burgundian, which is pretty cool. Okay. So there.
Let's get onto our list then. We got a
Let's
top
banter.
5, and as I believe my intro very clearly enunciated, this is our top 5. I guess language independent. Do you feel like that's a kind of what we're gunning for? Is that accurate?
That's a good way to put it. I came up with top 5 language proof games.
Okay. Now,
but I guess independent is maybe slightly better. Whatever.
So when you say language proof, so do any of your games have any words in them at all, other than just like maybe names on cards?
There are like names, like card titles, for example,
Right,
but
yeah.
that doesn't affect your ability to play the game, because card titles are only referenced by, I don't know, other cards or parts on the board or something. Okay. So yeah, I guess how I thought of this was top 5 games that, if, like you said, if you went to another country and they had a foreign copy of this game, and I went a step further.
Well, if you went to another country, it's not a foreign copy, but okay.
Well, okay, that's a good point.
If they had a foreign copy, it might be in English.
You played. Okay, sure. You could stay here in America, and you're playing a foreign copy of the game. But everyone else you're playing with also does not speak the language that you speak. So my caveat was you don't even have a way to communicate and, like, I don't know, check the rule book or try to, like, reference what another piece means. You kind of have to have a standard understanding of a game.
Okay.
So there are certain games I overlooked that I'll mention as runner-ups.
Yeah, I'm interested
that basically were close, but are like, you have to kind of reference the rules every now and then to try to remember what one specific piece does.
See, that seems like a weird finicky thing, because basically any game that starts getting a bit heavier is going to run into that generally. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll be interested to hear how you explain that.
Number 1 will surprise you.
Probably not. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and start, I guess.
All right. Do it.
My number 5 is an Alexander Pfister game. This is one that I played a couple of years ago, year and a half ago. Liked it a lot. Actually had a chance to play it again recently. Enjoyed it even more so than I did originally. This is Isle of Skye, which, speaking of Carcassonne, it's another tile laying game, but each person's creating their own little map of tiles, and it has a very cool thing which I absolutely love, which is that at the beginning of each round, everybody draws 3 tiles out of a bag, and then they secretly assign a price using their own money, assign a price to 2 of the tiles and pick one to trash. The one that gets trashed, and then everyone reveals, and then everyone has an option to buy one of the other person's tiles for the prices that player gave to them. And whichever tiles you have left over at the end, you have to pay for. So it's just such a cool mechanism, maybe a little bit difficult to explain, but it's just a fantastic kind of auction mechanism, almost. Not really auction, but I just love that part. And then on top of that, it has the same scoring as Cartographers, where there's different things that score during different rounds. Just brilliant little game. The actual Carcassonne tile laying element is a bit weird, because the terrains have to match, the different types of terrain, but roads don't have to match. So you can have like a road just going into a piece without a road, which is really unintuitive and weird. But there's no words basically at all in the entire game. It's all just symbols, and yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I still have not played this. It sounded interesting. I remember from the first time that you actually mentioned it on the podcast, but I still have not played it. So someday.
If you ever get a chance, highly recommend.
My number 5 is a game that I believe we have played, and I don't think you were a huge fan of it.
Nidavellir.
And no. This is a game that wasn't in print, and I searched for a long time to find it and finally got it on eBay. Heaven and Ale.
Ah.
Okay. You have played this, right?
Yes, we played it once.
Okay, that's what I thought. This is sort of an odd game for me because I like how it looks. I even like how it plays. At the same time, it's a bit frustrating because it is a difficult game, and I feel like if it almost needs a little bit of a fix. But even so, like I still really enjoy it. It sits in a weird place in my heart. But all that to say, there's no text, no descriptions, nothing you need to know. I mean, obviously you need to know how to play the game, but
it's all self-explanatory.
Yeah, exactly. It's just numbers. It's just symbols. You could go and play this in a foreign language, assuming they still use standard Roman whatever characters, so you can understand it. Yeah. And how it functions is you have 5 different little resource trackers representing things like hops, water, like wood, the things you need to make beer if you were a monk. And you're competing as a monk in charge of a little cloister, and you're trying to grow the best beer. The theme does not really have much to do with what you're actually doing, so that there is some disconnect there. But basically, you're trying to get all 5 of your resources up as far as you can on a little tracker. And then you have a 6th sort of a resource that's he just functions in a bit of a different way. He moves in a different way. It's your brewmaster. And so when you end the game and hopefully you have all 5 of your resources in the positive, you're going to take the lowest resource, whichever one you ended up improving the least, and multiply that by a little bracket that your brewmaster lands in. So it's kind of a little math game. It's very mathy, very technical in what you're trying to do. But you don't need to know words. You just need to know the concept, and you're good to go.
It's funny, everything you're describing, I don't remember about the game. I remember the other stuff. I remember the rondelle, and I remember the kind of placement of stuff that's Honey Buzz-esque. Those are the things I remember about the game.
Yeah, when you surround a shed, you basically place a shed based off of the value of the tiles you put around it. Yeah, I guess I kind of left out the main way you play the game, which is the rondelle. I was trying to keep it a little bit shorter, but it's a rondelle effect where whoever's farthest behind goes next, and then you buy up all the tiles. The other reason it's difficult is because money is very tight, and you need money to do stuff, so it just kind of hurts your brain, and it gets a little bit frustrating.
I also have to say, I remember the spatial element where you're, I guess, placing things on a map. I found that part to be a bit obtuse, and I felt that Honey Buzz scratched the same itch, but a little bit more clearly.
I probably like this more than Honey Buzz.
That's fair.
Hard to say. Yeah.
Okay, my number 4, I would not be surprised if it's on your list, unless for whatever reason you did not qualify this to be on your list. Seven Wonders Duel is, I think, perfect for this list. It's a fantastic little card drafting game, 2-player only card drafting game. Uses the 7 Wonders skeleton, basically, of getting resources and then using those resources to acquire different cards. And the cool part about it is that there's a couple different potential ways that the game can be ended immediately, either a military victory or a science victory, or it can expire naturally, you count up points, whatever. But
yeah,
fantastic card drafting game, to my knowledge. No text other than card titles, so definitely qualifies, I would think. A lot of symbology, but very easy to digest symbology, not complicated at all.
Yeah, Seven Wonders Duel did not quite make my list. It barely got kicked off. It is one of the honorable mentions. And yeah, I think a very reasonable argument could be made to keep it on. The reason I nudged it off is because I had that caveat of I also have to not need to like reference the rules every now and then if I don't quite remember like a specific piece. And Seven Wonders Duel has all those green like science circle things that you get.
Oh yeah.
And I don't always remember what their symbol means. So sometimes I have to pull out the rulebook to try to decipher that. So that's the only reason that I kind of nudged it off. But yeah, still a good choice.
All right.
My number 4. Ah, okay. Apparently, according to my top 100 list, I do like this more than Heaven and Ale. It's Honey Buzz, Nate.
No way. Are you kidding me?
I guess I forgot, but number 4 is Honey Buzz.
I think your top hundo needs a little reworking, Cody, or you need to memorize it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't.
That's unbelievable.
It is kind of funny. I'll second guess myself. My games will flip around every now and then. I feel like every time I do a new top 100 list for the year, just because I'm indecisive about that sort of thing. Okay. Especially if they're so close.
I'm going to give you an exercise here. Instead of explaining Honey Buzz, I want you to explain how Honey Buzz is different than Heaven and Ale.
Okay. Honey Buzz is more a contract fulfillment game. Heaven and Ale, you're doing your own thing. There's not really contracts. There are public objectives in Heaven and Ale that are just sort of competitive, but they're always the same. Honey Buzz, you're flipping over these different contracts, so you're trying to progressively make different combinations of honey to fulfill orders, and you get points off of that. I'm trying to think, yeah. Well, and it's a worker placement game.
Right.
That's kind of one of the other big main functions. Heaven and Ale, you're just going around in a rondelle.
And it does workers in the way that Architects does it, right? Where if you've already gone to a spot, you have to place more workers to go to the same spot again.
Yes, including if you're already there. So if you have 2 workers there or someone else has 2, then the next person has to place 3. I think you can actually place more than that if you want, if you just want to block someone, which is kind of a neat aspect. Yeah, but workers are like so tight, like if you don't want to put down 4, like that sucks. Yeah, it's very different theme. Instead of brewing beer, you're brewing honey, I guess. Little anthropomorphic forest critters. So it's a very gentle and relaxing game. And the tile placement's a little bit different too. It does have, like you said, a similar aspect where once you surround a little hexagon, then that causes stuff to happen, which is quite similar. But you're not confined to a map. You can just build your honeycomb in any shape that you want. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's Honey Buzz. But you don't need to know words.
I said, and you like this game more than Heaven and Ale. Got it.
Slightly more than Heaven and Ale. I feel like Heaven and Ale still holds a more special place in my heart.
How many, Cody? Have you
this probably is a better game.
Have you played Heaven and Ale more than 3 times? Have you played it more than twice?
I think I've played it at least 3, maybe 4 times.
Okay,
maybe even 5 times, actually.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm guessing she likes Honey Buzz more, though.
Oh yeah. I don't think she's a huge fan of Heaven and Ale. I think she likes how it looks, but
well, I'm Team Kirsten then, and I don't even like how it looks that much actually. So
that's fine.
My number 3, I'm guessing, is not going to be on your list for the same reason Seven Wonders Duel is not, which is your strange caveat, which I will not besmirch too much. Castles of Burgundy is one that I'm assuming there's too much rule looking up, or not rule looking up, but like, what does this special yellow tile do?
Yes,
right? Because all the
special
yellows
and the shields, which granted is unique to the anniversary edition. But yeah, because of that, I took it off.
That's fair. And for your caveat, that totally makes sense. There's no way this should qualify because this, even after you've played the game a lot, every once in a while, still a tile comes up and you're like, I'm like 90% sure what that means, but it's pretty important to know 100% what it means, right? Because it could break the game if you do it a little bit wrong, which I know from experience. So
the funny aspect about this whole foreign language proof issue is that in the English version, I forget which tile it is. It's either one specific like unique brown tile, or maybe it was like one of the yellow science things. The English version apparently actually is translated incorrectly. And if you know the German version, I had to look this up and find this on BGG, one of the tiles functions differently.
That's like a German bias. They're like catering to their own nation over other nations. I don't appreciate
I guess so.
But okay, brief overview. Castles of Burgundy is dice placement where everyone rolls their own dice every single round and then uses those dice, manipulates them to get new tiles and add new tiles to their own little display that they're building up and triggering special abilities and getting points and all that kind of fancy stuff. Great, just fantastic game.
That all you got? Anything else you want to say about it?
Nope, that's all I got.
Don't need
I
to
love
know
it.
words?
Don't need to know words.
And you already know why I left it off the list, but it also was very, very close. Very close. All right, my number 3 is a game you have not played, I don't think. I know you've not played it when I got it, and I don't think you've played it outside of that. And I really want to teach you this game, and Kirsten doesn't actually like it very much, which makes me sad. This is Acropolis. Acropolis, there's like no words. There's barely even any numbers. It's just a bunch of colored tiles. So you just have to remember how the different colored tiles score and your standard placement restrictions. But beyond that, it's an abstract game that's very easy to pick up and play. You're placing down these tiles they're triple tiles. So I don't know what you call that shape when you put 3 hexagons together, sort of in a triangle. What'd you call it?
Oh, wait, is it a triomino? What do you mean
a triomino? You just have to look it up, I guess. But if you put 3 hexagons together so they all connect and sort of make a triangle-ish shape, yeah, triomino, I guess. You're putting these things down, and they're all randomized. Each little triple hexagon thing has 3 different possible, well, obviously 3 spaces, like 5 different color possible that you can put down on them. So they're going to have like the red buildings are the barracks, I think, and those score more if they're on the outside of your city at the very end. You're putting all these tiles together on your own little personal spot. But then there's also a red star, and red stars, if you multiply how many red stars you have, kind of King Domino style, by the red barracks you have that also qualify according to their placement restriction, that's how many points you score for the red buildings. But there's another layer to this. So there's like 5 of those different colors. When you place down one of these triomino things, you can place them on top of other tiles you've placed.
I like
In
that.
doing so, you cover those up, and now they no longer will do anything for you. So at the end of the game, they're kind of useless. But the tile you placed is now on a second level, which means all of the qualifying tiles on there will score double. And if you get it up to the 3rd level, those will score triple. But it's not as easy as just stacking one tile on itself, and you just make a stack of like 20 tiles up in the air and just score the top thing. No, you always have to overlap at least 2 tiles. So it's very difficult to get any higher than like 3 or 4 levels by the end of the game. And yeah, I really like it. It's quick and easy to play, but there's a lot of thinking that goes into it.
What is it with games where the red is associated with the military element of the game? Like you just mentioned that the barracks are red. I'm thinking Tapestry, the red track is military. Seven Wonders Duel, it's the red little sword and shield icon for military. Is it blood, or what is it that like red is just the aggressive color that always ends up?
I think it's just standard association with it. Like, yeah, red is the aggressor.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I'm sure I could sit down and like look at my collection and like come up with like 5 more games that also use that.
All have
so that's
red.
Kind of weird.
Is the bad. Yeah.
Okay, my number 2 is a game also that you have not played. It is rife with symbology. In fact, I don't think I've played this game once where I didn't have to look up a symbol and see what something meant. So I guess in a way, this almost doesn't qualify. I can see what you mean, where like if I play this game and I still can't remember what certain things mean, then, I don't know. So, but
you're kind of screwed.
It's not like you have to like Google Translate like the cards or something in the game, because there's no like text abilities, basically. It's all symbology. There's just a lot. This is Great Western Trail, the 2nd edition specifically. Another Pfister game, actually, he made it twice onto my list. It's just fantastic. It's this enormous rondel. You're adding buildings to it, so the rondel's changing every time you go through it. And then there's also a deck building / hand management aspect where you have these different cows that you're using as you go along the path. And then you want to have a diverse hand of cows when you get to the end, because then you can sell them for more profit, basically.
Can you say a diverse hand of cows again?
Diverse hand of cows.
Yeah.
That should be like the colon.
That's all.
That should be the colon title for this game. Great Western Trail, Diverse Hand of Cows.
The subtitle, like the movie poster.
Yeah, basically. It's like the sequel version It's like you have Great Western Trail
Nice.
and then Great Western Trail, a diverse hand of cows.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely love it. The game looks really good too, in my opinion. At least the second edition does. Argentina specifically is a really pretty copy, and decently heavy game. Very thinky, very plan ahead a few moves, but so many interlocked things happening. I love it, and the theme is cool.
Yeah, I have not played. I would like to. I think it's on the to get list eventually, somewhere at some point.
Honestly, it works pretty well at 2. I think it is better with a higher player count. I've played at 3 now, but I don't think it's so much better that I would still very much like to play it at 2 and be perfectly fine with it. I don't think it's that important to play with more players.
I'm still disappointed by Western Legends. That's in the to sell pile. I don't think we even finished the full game that we started for it. Granted, it would definitely be better with like 3 or 4 players, but I don't know. Just it didn't have the magic I thought it would.
It wasn't RPG enough for you, like role playing enough.
I guess so. It felt like open ended in like a consequenceless way, to where I don't know. There just like wasn't much point or incentive to go a given route. I guess I don't really know how to put it, but it was just kind of uninteresting. It's like, yeah, I guess I'll go roll some gold dice and get some gold. Oh, look, okay, I'm going to travel back and sell that now. Okay, what do I do next? You just kind of, it's like that the whole game.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it needs the player interaction because it is a highly beloved game, and so I'm guessing that's the problem.
Yeah, I probably just missed out on the ideal experience.
Yeah.
But that is not my number 2. My number 2 is a game that is actually going to be something of a stand-in to represent a whole breed of games by a breed of games by 2 specific designers. This is, do you have a guess, Nate?
By 2 specific designers. I guess Katala and Bowser. I don't know.
No.
Wait,
this is
Bowser,
Wayfarers of the South Tigris.
Of course.
Aha. Because good old Shem Phillips and Sam McDonald are very effective.
Wait, could you say Shem Phillips' name one more time?
Shem Phillips.
All right.
And S.J. McDonald, yeah. They have come up with a very effective symbology system that, granted, is not universal across all their games. There's some variations. And I think there's even like one game where one symbol actually means something completely different from a different game. So a little bit of an oversight there.
Heresy.
But yeah, I know. But it's something that they're known for and that they did a good job with. So Wayfarers, it was sort of weird putting it on this list because it's a pretty heavy game. And so not reference it, like you really need to know the game well. But if you understand the symbology system, there shouldn't be any hiccups in understanding a specific space. You can usually reason it out according to their little system. I almost put Paladins here because I actually like Paladins more than Wayfarers, but I ruled out Paladins because there is text on the Paladin cards maybe if you memorized by the picture, the artwork on a given card, maybe you remember what they all do, but I didn't think that was a reasonable assumption to make.
Nope,
so Wayfarers, this kind of represents architects and viscounts and sort of paladins and all that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe the game. It's such a convoluted resource conversion management, moving your guys up a track and placing cards so they score off of each other. Shem Phillips, Sam McDonald's game. That's what it is.
It's got the cool element of it's dice placement, kind of. Part of the game is dice placement, but then you can also upgrade your dice, basically. Not upgrade the physical dice themselves, but add more abilities to the dice, to the numbers, which is pretty sweet.
Then there's also the neutral workers that kind of get passed around here and there that change where you can go. So yeah, kind of a dual worker placement system.
Yeah, Wayfarers is probably pretty close to being on this list. I just didn't have to go that deep into some of my favorite games to get to it, but it was probably decently close. Yeah. Fantastic game.
Good game, yeah.
My number 1 is a game that I only just played relatively recently, and I've played it a handful of times, and it's just floored me with how much I've enjoyed it. It really kind of came out of nowhere. Wasn't even that excited to play it, honestly, the first time I played it. And I've mentioned it recently. This is a game I used to own and never played when I owned it. This is Terra Mystica. And it's almost hard to explain because actually the game seems relatively simple. You basically just there's a map with a bunch of different colored territories, and then you have one of the special factions, and you have all these buildings on your board, and there's kind of a hierarchy of buildings that can be upgraded into each other. But all of the buildings, no matter what, are going to give you some kind of income bonus when they come, like when they're off your board. So depending on which boards you have out off of your mat and onto the main board, there will be different income bonuses showing. But then if you're upgrading things, certain buildings will come back in and other ones will go back out, so the income bonuses change. And then there's other actions you can do. There's other elements to the game too. There's other stuff that I'm not even going to get into. But just that system is pretty cool, not to mention the, whatever it is, 8 or 10 or 16 different factions or whatever it is. There's a lot of different factions. And they all play differently, and they definitely have their own strengths, and there's certain buildings you want to build or work towards with certain factions and other ones with other factions. And it's just, yeah, it's really, really cool. It's really fantastic. I just want to keep playing it and testing out new factions and experimenting with stuff. And it's just such, in my opinion, a pretty relatively ugly game. And I was never really interested in it. And I'm so glad I gave it a shot. And yeah, there's basically no text at all whatsoever. There's not even any cards in the game. So, yeah.
Really? Okay.
Nope.
You got to let me know if you try Gaia Project, because that was on my list for quite a while. Kirsten doesn't like space-themed games, so I ended up moving it down.
And I also think Gaia Project's pretty ugly too, but I guess it is supposed to be kind of a little beefed up version of Terra Mystica. And then Age of Innovation is the one that came out just last year or whatever, which is kind of another reworking of the same system by the same designers. So
a game that's not very fun. It is not Innovation.
Oh, yeah,
I mentioned Innovation on the podcast at one point. It was kind of an interesting idea. You're just trying to get to like the 10th age, but the way you get there is like it should only be like 5 ages.
Yeah, you said it really overstayed its welcome, right?
It really did. Yeah, neat idea, but not well executed.
Pretty ugly game too, right?
Sort of neutral, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why it is my number one. No, I'm just kidding.
Checks out.
my number one is a game that Kirsten and I both love. That you didn't get the fire, which I'm sad by.
Wait.
Oh,
I think I know what it is, because this is a game that is very heavy, but actually there's not that many symbols in it. If I'm thinking, of the same
that's
game.
right.
Brass Birmingham.
That's right. This is Brass Birmingham. Okay. Yes. That granted, this is a game where you need to remember the networking rules, which sometimes can get a little bit confusing. Like, wait, okay, so I need resources from here, but what if I place this thing here? And granted, you do need to reference the rulebook every now and then if you don't know that well. But if you do know it well, Brass Birmingham is a game that is language independent. There's like no words anywhere. I mean, there are city names, but they're within a color, and the cards that relate to them, it's the city of Birmingham is still going to be Birmingham. It's not going to be something different in a different language. So it doesn't really matter what the word is. You just match it to the card, and then you can build an industry in that city. Yeah, super heavy game of networking. You're placing your canals in the first era, and then those flip over, and you're placing rails in the second era to expand out through the British countryside in it's like late 1700s to early 1800s to place different industries that are specific to each city that all have certain ways that you can activate them to either get a one-time resource or flip them over, and then you score points off of them, and you build an income, and you have to manage your income, and you're managing multiple resource industries that are running around because there's a common market that you can affect and sell into or buy out of. Brass Birmingham is an excellent game, and it is my number 2 in my top 100 list. It moved up. It was like, I don't know, in the top 10, somewhere in the top 10, but after a couple of years, I'm like, I like this so much. It's not quite replacing Scythe, but it is such a good game that it's my number 2. and it's the number 1 on this list.
I'm wondering if I'm gonna push back a little bit here on the city on the cards with the city names, because, well, for example, what if you had like a Chinese copy of the game with a different script? Do you think that like the names of the cities would still be using Roman characters?
Maybe not, but I mean, as long as you like those squiggles match up with these squiggles here on the board, plus there's artwork. There's artwork on the cards that match the artwork on the board.
Okay, then that's fine.
Too.
As long as long as each city does look different, it's not just based on the name. Okay. All
so
right.
it could become a bit of a hiccup, but it's not going to prevent you from playing the game.
Okay.
Worst case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's a really intense 3-hour strategy game where if, there's disagreements about, like, oh, I thought this card was that card because I can't read Mandarin Chinese. No one's really going to care because it's not that big of a deal, right? It's just a 3-hour
There's
endeavor.
art on the cards, man. It matches the board. Yeah.
All right, brass. Yeah. No, I just don't like brass that much. I don't know why. It just doesn't click for me, It's not that it's too difficult. It's just not interesting enough, I guess, for me.
Yeah. That's okay. To each his own. I mean, it's sad that you're not experiencing the glory that is brass and that you just don't have the sophistication, I guess, to appreciate it, but it's okay.
Wow, that was low, Cody. That was low. We could go back and forth all day, like jabbing at each other about games that we think the other person should like. So I'm not even gonna.
This is the number 1 game on BGG. So there.
Yeah, but isn't that just because like people hate voted Gloomhaven? I'm not even gonna get into it. There's like again, nope, not getting into that. That's
all right,
it, right?
All right.
That's our list. That's our top 5 language-independent games. Basically, just meaning we copied and pasted games out of our top 100 that didn't have too much text in them.
Hey, I spent time thinking
you
about it.
You did, because you had that
I don't know
caveat.
about you.
You had that caveat. And for me...
Exactly, because I am a creative and sophisticated individual
but I don't necessarily,
who likes brass.
I don't necessarily agree with your caveat, because there's with any game, feasibly, you could say, well, you might have to check the rules. And you even said that with like a couple of games, like brass. You even said like, well, you might have to check the rules for a couple things. So then it kind of invalidates your pick.
It was different from something like Seven Wonders Duel, where there's these randomized pieces that they have a common rule set for how you acquire them. What's different is like they have a description that you may have to remember.
Okay.
Which is why I ruled them out.
And so the symbology in Wayfarers, just have to memorize that.
Yeah, basically.
All righty, and let's wrap it up.
But that's more reasonable, so there.
Oh, okay.
And remember, they run as if the very whips of the masters were behind them. Yeah, listeners, I just watched Kingdom of Heaven a week ago.
Hey, okay.
So, been thinking about Orlando Bloom and that line right there. Which, I watched Lord of the Rings probably 3 or 4 times before I finally figured out what he actually says in that line. Because it's just so random, and he's like running by and he has to get it all in. You're like, what?
You know what, Cody? That means you don't watch movies with subtitles, and I respect that.
Hey, thanks, dude. Appreciate that.